All right, welcome everyone. I'm Kim. Tonight we're joined by Vechi Mutum, Treehouse Recovery's Outreach Director, for a Q&A type gathering. For those of you that are unsure what his job might entail, an Outreach Director serves as the liaison between a facility and the community by educating, training, providing resources, and creating meaningful relationships. We think Vechi does a great job with all of those things. And tonight he has offered to answer some of our questions about going to rehab and detox, from the point of admitting the need for help through graduation and maybe even beyond. We welcome you to begin typing in your questions. Welcome, Vechi. We are so glad to have you here, and we look forward to hearing some great information. If
So I,
you're, Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Sorry about that. I printed out. Sue does a great job of giving me different topics, and we went through some of these, and I looked at them, and I thought, man, these would be great to kind of go over little by little, because I'm sure everybody has some questions that sit somewhere in the realm of some of these, and they're all great questions. Um, so one of the first ones that's on here is, what are the first 3 days like for our loved one when they enter rehab detox? So that's big. That's all. That encompasses a lot of different things. For them, on the physical level, they're miserable. They're sick. They don't feel well. Depending on the substance that they're detoxing from, they can be exhausted. They may not want to move much. Very lethargic. If they're coming in off of an opiate, they're anxious, nervous. There's a lot of issues with the guts and intestines. They're having to go to the bathroom frequently, cold sweats, night terrors, inability to sleep. Alcohol, on the other hand, tremors, sometimes hallucinations. The first 3 days are not fun. So the first 3 days are sleeping. They are medically monitored depending on where they go. At my facility, we check them every 15 minutes, check their vitals, make sure they're doing okay. It's very uncomfortable. So if you have a loved one going into detox, you may not hear from them for the first 2 to 3 to 5 days. That's not abnormal at all. They feel like crap. If you do hear from them, it's probably not going to be pleasant. They're not all there. They're going to be mad. They're going to be upset. They're going to be cranky. They're not going to feel good. So that's kind of what the deal is on for them coming in. Those first 3 days are hell. So don't expect to do too much from them. They aren't going to wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, thank you so much for sending me to detox. I'm finally here. Not likely to happen. They're going to be uncomfortable. Their body is going through a horrific detox process, and they're just trying to get through to the next moment. Let's see. What else we have here? This is one I like a lot. So since my child entered rehab, they refuse to speak to me. What's going on? So this is big. Being both the addict and emotional terrorist of a parent when I was out there, I can well imagine the amount of shock parents go through when they finally get their child or their loved one to detox or into treatment, and now they don't want to talk to us. Furious, infuriating. We thought you were going to die every other day, and now we've got you here, and now I'm deprived of your connection with me. You won't talk to me. You're mad at me. There's a myriad of things that causes this. I'll see guys who are upset at mom or dad for stuff that happened when they were kids. Don't, and I know it's hard. I know you, in your hearts, you may feel that you're being given the worst slight possible. You just got them there and they're safe, but they are going through all of these emotions. They don't know who they're mad at or what's going on, and they're in the middle of something called pause, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later. Pause is post-acute withdrawal syndrome, and it's what the brain goes through, anywhere from cessation of use all the way out to 18 months, sometimes longer depending on the drug. And it it's difficult. It's mood swings, it's ups, it's downs. And sometimes, if we see a lot of emotional sensitivity to a certain parent or loved one, the therapist will ask them to pause that for a minute. Let's hold off on that relationship. Let's pick apart what's going on. Usually, it's the individual who's got a very sharp or aggressive or abrasive response reaction, some basic requests by the loved one. Other times, the loved one has been putting up with the behavior for quite a long time and wants to unload a little bit, wants to go, hey, the hell were you thinking? How dare you? Which they have every right to do. And I understand where they're coming from, but the individual who just got into recovery may not be able to process these things in the most healthy or respond in the most healthy manner. And this can cause people to spin out, get mad, leave rehab, all kinds of stuff. And that's the last thing we want to happen, right? We don't want that to occur.
Right.
So, um, so um, that may be some of the reason. Sometimes it's advised by a therapist. Sometimes it's not a good emotional time. They may be going over something where this particular individual is brought up and it's sensitive and raw and uncomfortable. Um, those are all things that can happen. So don't take too much offense to it. Don't read too much into it. It's part of the process. I did see a question that popped up. Where did it go?
Yeah,
Here.
Lee, I think that was kind of your question. If my child won't speak to me, or even after they graduate, what role should I play? She says.
Right.
Okay.
I think he covered it.
So
Yeah.
to add a little bit more into that, it takes time. Okay, and the way they respond, the way they respond on month one is going to be different than the way they respond on month two and month three and month four. As they start to take ownership of some of this stuff, it that can change. It won't always happen in the time frame you want it to, but it can and will change. It just takes patience. Um, don't expect them to come out firing on all cylinders right when they do, right when they're done. It's not going to happen that way. First, we get them to stop destroying themselves, and then we're trying to figure out how to get them to manage relationships. And in a lot of these relationships, there's wounds on both sides, deep, long, painful wounds. It takes a little while, and the role that you can play is loving and supportive with boundaries and with some healthy guidelines. You're nobody's punching bag anymore. You're not you're not to be leveraged with their love. Well, if you don't give me, then I'm not going to talk. Those are different things. That's the manipulator trying to take back over the control of the relationship. That's different. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Keep expectations low. Keep hope big, right? And have a lot of patience and tolerance, not just for them, but for you too. You may get on the phone with them and they might have a bad day or not like what was served or had a rough day in a therapy session and go off on you. It's not your, don't take full ownership of that. They're learning how to respond and react to life. That takes some
Right.
time. It takes some time.
Stacy wants to know, and I'm assuming she means in the facility setting, how do you deal with psychosis that may present?
So I'd want to know a little bit more specifics. If psychosis shows up out
Right.
of nowhere, something's gone on. There's either been a reintroduction of drugs or alcohol. If this was something that they came in with, this would be something that would be out of the scope of treatment for like Treehouse. They don't handle higher levels like that. If it's a mental health condition. Now, I say that carefully because if you have somebody who's been abusing stimulants or amphetamines for an extended period of time, they're going to exhibit those exact symptoms. However, they're not schizophrenic. They don't have those issues. They've been up so long. It's called schizophrenic or schizoaffective disorder due to methamphetamine or amphetamine abuse. It's not natural to them. And there's a couple, and I'm not a psychiatrist. I've just been doing this a while. I experienced symptoms of psychosis after using meth for an extended period of time. I would see things, hear things, was very paranoid, but I had no previous diagnosis. One of the telltale signs is if you have a diagnosis of schizophrenia or some type of paranoia or schizoaffective disorder before onset of use. What that means is if I start using psychedelics and cocaine at 16 and then start to have my first diagnosis of schizoaffective at 17, well, the illicit drugs preceded the diagnosis. Now, at 15 or 16, I start to hear voices, something's going on, I'm uncomfortable, and I report these things and I'm diagnosed at 15 or 16 before illicit substances are being used or abused. That's different. This was an underlying mental health issue that then exacerbated itself by utilizing illicit substances afterwards. So that's kind of a careful track you can follow. There are exceptions to these, though. Um, One case in particular, I'll tell you guys, and this is how difficult it is. It's really looking at the chicken or the egg. This is why it's so important that the facility you're at do a thorough assessment on the phone, get as much medical documentation as possible. We had gotten an individual from another facility that was a dual diagnosis facility, and the director of that facility has been doing this at that time for around 30 years. Brilliant woman, and she sent us this individual. And in the report, it had stated that he started using drugs around 16 or 17, and they kicked him out. So he was on the streets for 3 years, and he had come to them, was doing well inside their facility with very minimal medications, nothing crazy going on. We do an assessment. Guy seems fine. Psychiatrist sees him. He seems fine. About a week into it, he starts to talk about some pretty strange stuff. Now, because we stay so close onto the guys and we're so observant, we were able to see him start to decompensate. Like things started coming apart. We pull him back in. We do further investigation, and with, of course, permission, we brought in a psychiatrist who's just brilliant at this, and she did a lot of digging with the client themselves. Come to find out, he was schizophrenic. He had started experiencing symptoms at 16 or 17. Family believed he was using drugs. He was not. They thought he was using drugs because of the symptoms he was reporting. And instead of getting him medical help or mental health treatment, they kicked him out. So the kid was on the street for 4 years. No one saw the behaviors that he was exhibiting. He eventually started using alcohol and some other things. But when he finally showed up back into treatment years later, when they grabbed him, they thought, oh, it was because of the drugs. It wasn't. It was a very rare case of late onset male schizophrenia. Now that guy's doing great now. He's got the medication he needs, but it is very tricky. And sometimes the chicken comes before the egg, and vice versa. You never really know.
Yeah,
So it's important to really look at things.
tricky.
Very.
Leslie asks, can you talk about the benefits/drawbacks of medical detox?
Of course. So there's two things that require, and this is in the state of California for liability reasons, medical detox. That's alcohol and benzodiazepines because of the risk of seizure or death. This is not true for heroin. This is not true for methamphetamine. It's uncomfortable. It's not something you would put anybody through, but in most cases, it's not lethal. Severe alcohol or benzodiazepine withdrawal can cause the brain some pretty traumatic, it puts it through a lot. It can cause seizure, it can cause death. When you're talking about a case involving any of those substances or fentanyl as well, I would go with medical detox every time. We have to. In fact, if you walk into an emergency room and you're going through alcohol or benzo detox, that's why they have to give you some type of taper there. You can die. It's serious. I understand sometimes it's more expensive, so it's more of a pain in the butt. Listen up. There's only one irreplaceable item in the conversation, and that's the human being we're trying to get okay. So if he can't make it through, if he passes, we've got no one to treat, no one to heal, and no one to get back to their families. Safety first. Safety first.
Yeah, thank you. Nikki asks, I'm new. Please help me define support versus enabling and explain boundaries. What's fair?
We could do a whole show on that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
You guys have got the experience. It's I can tell you this, with all the families I've worked with, the individuals whose families are getting help have a greater chance of getting and staying well. So while he's in there or she's in there, or while your loved one's getting help, make sure you are getting the help that you need to establish those things. Some of it may be enabling, some of it may be just support. There's some rules that I kind of go by. I don't want to generalize too much, but you want to make sure that what you are providing them supports their recovery and not their use. Cash is almost always a bad idea. They want food, you can have food sent to them. Supporting them in recovery with getting them into treatment or with housing or anything like that is always a good thing, unless they start to abuse you with it. Again, case by case basis. if he decides that, or if this individual decides that he's not going to work and pocket his money and you're going to cover his sober living bill so he can pay for pizzas and his new girlfriend, that's not really helping. That's enabling at this point. So there's no definitive answer to it. The video that Karen did for you guys on codependency and enabling is amazing. She's a mom
Agreed.
who's in recovery, who has a son in recovery, who understands the ins and outs. And I have had some of my greatest conversations about how to help people with her. She would call, Vechi, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know what I'm about to do, and they don't line up. What's going on? I know better. This is my job. So she understands it wholeheartedly, how much it can pull at you. And holding those boundaries is hard. It's hard.
Indeed. We have a question from Sue. I understand that the early process of recovery is its own issue, but is there a point in recovery where it is absolutely mind over matter?
So that's a difficult question. Is there a point in recovery where it's mind over matter? There's a point, like for me personally, it's a choice. I wake up in the morning and I make an active choice and have so every morning since 2011 that I'm going to be sober today. And I do everything I think I need to do to be there. But it's a choice. It's not, and I do get that. Well, it's like automatic now. No, it's not. There's always at least two ways to go. And I am choosing this. And it's not always as simple or as definitive as a drink or a drug. Sometimes it's a behavior, maybe a little white lie. Am I gonna, maybe they handed me more money back and I took incorrect change. Do I hand it back to them? What thing am I gonna make the decision to be lesser than on that day? It's a choice, and it's one I must choose every single day. And if I don't choose it, the choice will be made for me by my actions. I have to stay ahead of it. So in that respect, I would say, yeah, there comes a point where your choice is everything. I'm not a robot. The wind doesn't I don't just blown away. I have choice. I have intention. I have purpose, but I have that ability because I'm sober. If I wasn't,
That's
all go out the window.
excellent points. Yeah, I think it's a daily choice from here on out for all of our kids, I believe. Thank you so much. Betsy asks, are they able to manipulate therapists in rehab and how?
They try. They try. Uh, they try. One of the ways that we see this a lot is when you have groups, like you have an individual, you have a family member, and let's say you're scheduling a trip, right? And come to find out, let's say the guy's not doing, I keep saying guy because we treat guys, I apologize. I don't mean to exclude anybody. Let's say the individual is not doing what they need to do in the recovery side in housing. And the therapist has kind of brought that to their attention, says, maybe you need to get this together before we can excuse these overnights. Let's say mom's coming out to see him. Well, then he goes to mom and says, man, I don't know what's going on. They won't let me go. Can you talk to him, please? Here we go. Well, he just said he's doing really well, and you said he's doing really well. There must be something we can, and before we know it, we're being manipulated. We're being aligned in position like pieces on a chessboard. I've seen this a lot with families. Mom said no, dad said yeah. I didn't get what I want. Well, he said this and he said that, and then I've even seen the therapist's words flipped around on them. Well, you said as long as A, B, and C, then I should, and then you have to back out of that situation. I see it all the time. It's not rare. I wouldn't even say a decent therapist is going to catch it and call it pretty quick.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That seems to be all the questions we have in our chat box at this point. Anybody else? Oh, Sue asks another question for us. This is something we hear often in the mom recovery world. Can you define the saying, love them where they're at?
Can I define the same? I can. I can for me. I may not be happy with the choices. I may not be happy with the direction, but I love you. And saying I love you doesn't give you permission to use me or leverage me or hold me hostage. My love is mine to give. It's free.
Beautiful.
And I feel when we are in our addictions, we are so good at weaponizing that. I remembering every time you ever fell short or missed a birthday or missed a Christmas gift. And well, if it wasn't this, and then the secrets kept between parents and their children are brought up in these situations and they're used against you. Being able to love regardless of circumstance and regardless of their choices does not mean accepting them either. I love you, but this is crazy. This is going to hurt you. It breaks my heart to see you do this. Doesn't mean I don't love you. Can I come home? No, it's not a good situation. Never been a good situation. Can't come home, but I love you. Well, if I do this, will you love me anymore? I love you anyway. Doesn't mean I'm happy with what you're doing. Can't turn that off any more than anyone else can. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean allow or contribute or embrace the guilt.
No, not at all. Not at all. I love you freely. And that means that that's not a hammer for you to hit me over the head with or to drag me down with. Doesn't mean I owe you anything. It means I love you. And I want what's best for you. Sometimes that means not doing
Nice.
what you want.
Thank you for that. Nikki asks, does codependency have a boundary or is that kind of a blurry line?
I think when you fall into the realm of codependency, you've lost the boundary.
Hmm.
When boundaries are in place, healthy boundaries are in place with both parties, it's hard to get codependent. It really is. Codependency in and of itself is you will do this for me because I need this from you, or vice versa. When you start to have conversations like we just had about my love for you is not dependent upon anything, nor will you use it as a weapon against me. It's free. It has no currency that is expendable.
All right. Okay. We have one more question. How do they spend 6 months in rehab but never make amends? Is there a timeline for that, or is
Uh,
that just a real individual thing?
we're going to get out in the weeds in this one. I have my own personal belief.
Yeah.
I got I got sober in a particular way from a particular group who did things in a particular pattern. And with them, it was immediate. You didn't sit on stuff. You got it done. Amends can take a lifetime. Sometimes it's a living amends. Don't hang around and wait for an amends. Don't. That unfortunately is being a little bit codependent. Not that it was okay for what they did, right? But if you hold on to that resentment of you never made amends to me, are you truly accepting them for who they are today? Or are you holding them to what they were when they left?
Good point. Thank you. Can you tell us, Vechi, what is the process for someone getting into a facility like Treehouse?
Okay, so Treehouse is unique in its process. It's the only place in the world that does it the way they do it. The beginning of the process is an insurance verification and BPS from whatever facility they are at. That's a biopsychosocial. It's to make sure that we know what we're treating walking in and make sure we're in an appropriate situation. Then it would be getting on the phone with an admissions person. Um, I am still with admissions at Treehouse. I've got a great team over there as well who can kind of walk you through what the next steps are. But the first piece is usually insurance verification, finding out where they are at clinically, if it's an appropriate fit, and then finding out what's gone on from the familial point of view. You guys are one of the greatest resources for how this has happened. How did they get here? What did the last 10 years look like? Most of the times when we're in addictions, we don't remember. You guys know about coming back from the war, the wife that left, the car accident, the brother that died, the job that went, the so on and so forth, the jail time. You guys have been there cataloging it all when we've been kind of out of our minds. So gathering that kind of information helps us proper engage, connect, and build rapport with this individual to get them to trust us to move forward and make sure we give them the individual specific treatment they require to get well.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And Cami asks, does Treehouse take women?
Treehouse Recovery does accept women in their evening outpatient programs, which are in Orange County, California, Denver, Colorado, and Nashville, Tennessee, and Wilmington, North Carolina.
All right. Very good. Very good. You have a facility in Portland as well, and that's just for guys?
I
IOP?
do not have an outpatient for Portland, Oregon. We did for a while, but
Oh,
closed it down. So that's just you're correct. That is a
all
PHP, but
right.
gender specific only at this time.
All right. Very good. Well, that looks like all of the questions. Whoops, one more pops up. Do you feel it's a better chance, Stacy asks, do you feel if it's a better chance for recovery if our children do inpatient versus outpatient?
It depends on how deep do they require detox. Did they go so deep that they had to stop? If we're talking about somebody who was maybe drinking a little bit too much, then I think that's a possibility. Otherwise, if we're talking about something that's been a long fight, it's absolutely going to be inpatient, where they're getting the round the clock, the therapy. They're in there, they're working with other people, they're in a contained environment. Sometimes, especially for us who are kind of pressured with a lot of the outside stuff going on, being able to pull out for a second and just look at all the pieces, what needs to heal, what's going on before we step back into that world is critical. Getting sober in an environment where you've been comfortable using for an extended period of time is hard. I couldn't do it. I had to get out. Um, I was just having this conversation with a really good friend of mine the other day, and if you imagine a human being as a, a part of a puzzle, a piece, and you imagine this picture that has all these different colors and shapes, and there's a whole picture there, and this individual is a puzzle piece in that picture, and that's his environment. Those are his relationships, and like where the puzzle connects to the other piece are his friends and that dynamic and his parents and his job. And maybe he doesn't have a great relationship with his job. Maybe his boss kind of treats him like crap, and his friends are kind of below par. They just, no one's really doing anything. But this individual sits in this piece of the picture with all of these things going on. So we take this individual out of that situation, we bring him to a place like Treehouse, and we start to work on his self-confidence, his ability to process thought, his ability to have healthy relationships. This puzzle piece's shape actually changes. The part of him that needed the codependent relationship for the low achieving friends isn't there anymore. He doesn't need them. That's not the best he can do. He's not dying for their attention. He's confident now. Where he was dependent on his parents before for everything. Now he's not. Now he wants to be supportive. So his puzzle piece has actually changed. Now, the sad part to that is the only way that puzzle piece fits back in that old picture is if we turn it back into the piece it was. We take away its confidence. We take away its healing. We take away its growth and turn it back into that piece that was stuck in that mixture and milieu. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you, Vechi, so much for being here tonight with us. We really appreciate your dedication to the
Of course.
recovery community and all the support you give to us at the Addicts Mom. We always look forward to having you here with us, and you are so full of information. We know there's going to be a next time. Will you join us again?
Absolutely. Anytime you guys need.
Looking forward to it. Good night.